we spoke last, you were very clear on the unwillingness of Europe to give ground on the trade dispute with the US. But the time's getting short now, isn't it? May the 1st, the tariffs come in, unless the fact they've been suspended is renewed.
Yes, and frankly speaking, once again, we could not understand, we Europeans, to be hit by the American new tariffs. We are allies, and we don't want to be hit by the American tariffs. And we are doing really our best to avoid a trade war between the United States and Europe, because it would not be in the interest of Europe, of course, but not in the interest of the US also. So we are trying to find a compromise with the US. We do not want and we cannot accept to be hit by those tariffs.
But the tariffs will come back. You've only had a suspension from them.
But we don't want a suspension. Let me be very clear.
Right,
we want a full and permanent exemption from the US tariffs. Full and permanent. Because, you know, when you are telling us that it will be a suspension, we do not want to live under the threat of a kind of sword of Damocles hanging over our European heads, waiting for the decision of President Trump. We cannot live like that. We are allies. We cannot live under the threat of an ally like the United States. We want a full and permanent exemption.
Your president has described it as blackmail, the situation.
Yes, it's like blackmail. When you are explaining it will be a suspension, but if you are not abiding by the rule, if you are not doing exactly what we want you to do, then we will put back the tariffs on you.
Are you prepared to negotiate? I think that's the point. In the same way as Japan has said, yes, we will start a negotiation.
What kind of negotiation? What kind of negotiation? Is there a problem? Yes, there is a problem. The problem is the question of trade rules and the necessity of building a new trade multilateral approach. And we are ready to discuss that with the US. We have a problem with the Chinese behavior related to trade, and we want to engage China into a more multilateral approach. And we are ready to discuss that with our American friends.
Let's turn to France. You are, some would say, now embroiled in the battle of the political life, the Macron's Maggie moment. Are you determined to see these strikes out if necessary?
Yes, we are fully determined to adopt the law and to adopt the reforms. You know what is usual in France?
How much pain will people in France take? Will they support the government, or will they support the strikers, the transport workers, the health workers?
What would be the most painful for the French people would be the government giving up the reforms. That's exactly what we have been doing during the last 3 decades, and that we want to avoid that time. Because, you know, what is usual in France is that you are introducing a reform and you are facing strikes. But what is unusual is that this time we will stand firm. The law will be adopted and the reforms will enter into force.
Which begs the question, how much pain will there be? I mean, look, I lived through, you know, Maggie's 1980s, the miners' strike and all that.
But it won't be the case in France. I think that's not the right comparison, because in the UK it was very violent strikes, huge political difficulties. We are not facing the same kind of difficulties in France.
Yet.
Of course, there are yet, but strikes are legitimate. But the credibility of the government is to stand firm and to provide to the people a better economy with more competitiveness, with more jobs, with more growth. That's the sense of the reforms that we are introducing in France. And I can assure you that there is a full determination of the French president, the French government, to adopt those new reforms and to change France.
And if we now put this into the wider context of a Europe post-Brexit. Now, yeah, I know that you've got to maintain the integrity of the single market, and I've heard every side of this.
I can confirm you that we will
But at what point will the reality come that the UK is, for want of a better word, a marginally special case because of the size and scale of the market, and there has to be an accommodation?
but we will find accommodation. But the accommodation should not jeopardize the single market, should not jeopardize the European rules. The UK has decided to go out of Europe. This is their sovereign choice, but it should not jeopardize the future of Europe and the future of the European construction. You know, we are also fully determined with Emmanuel Macron to improve the functioning of Europe and especially to improve the functioning of the Eurozone.
Minister, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Always a
Busy
pleasure.
times.
Busy times.